Hello students. In the previous video, we talked about how Ashwamedha sacrifices or Ashwamedha Yag was very important. Now today we are going to start with the topic Janpads and then Mahajanpads. Now the Rajas who performed these big sacrifices, the Ashwamedh sacrifices, were now recognized as being Rajas of the Janpads. Now let us look at what the word Janpad actually means. Janpads mean the land where the Jans or the people first settled down. The leaders of some Janpads were chosen by the people. Now, the archaeologists have excavated a number of settlements in these Janpads, such as Purana Kila in Delhi, Hastinapur near Meerut, and Atranji Kheda near Etah. The last two are in Uttar Pradesh. In all these places found by the archaeologists, it has been found that Jans or the people lived in huts and kept cattle as well as other animals. Agriculture and crafts in the Janpads are observed by the archaeologists. Jans or the people in the Janpad grew a variety of crops such as rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugarcane, sesame, and mustard. They made earthen pots. Some of these were grey in color and others were in red. The painted grey ware is one of the special types of pottery found by the archaeologists at the Janpad sites. Painted grey ware, PGW. Plates and bowls are the most common vessels made out of painted grey ware. These are extremely fine to touch with a nice, smooth surface. Perhaps these were used on special occasions for important people and to serve special food. These painted grey ware or painted grey pottery were grey in color and had painted designs, usually simple lines and geometric patterns. About 2500 years ago, some Janpads became more important than the others and were known as Mahajanpads. Some of these are shown on the map. Now, there were 16 Mahajanpads spread across the North India and the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. Now, the important Mahajanpads were Gandhar, Kuru, Panchal, Kosal, Malla, Magad, Vatsa, Avanti, Matsya, etc. And all the locations that have been marked in this map. The Mahajanpads were the 16 kingdoms that stretched across modern day India, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. Most Mahajanpads had a capital city, and many of these cities were fortified. Fortified means had forts or kilas. Fortified cities mean huge walls of wood, brick, or stone built around the cities for protection. Forts were built to protect the Mahajanpad king against the attack of the enemies, and also to protect the people as they were afraid of the attacks from the other kings coming from outside. Some Rajas of Mahajanpads built impressive forts just to show how rich and powerful they are. Now, building huge walls of forts required great planning and lakhs of bricks or stones to build. These huge walls were the result of labor provided by thousands of men, women, and children. After building forts, the Rajas now had soldiers to protect their Mahajanpad and paid regular salaries to them. Another important reason why these fortified walls made out of bricks were made were also because the land and the people living inside the fortified area could be controlled more easily by the king or the Raja. Now, this picture shows the fortification wall at Kaushambi. This is a picture of remains of a wall made of brick found near present day Allahabad, Uttar Pradesh. A part of it was probably built around 2500 years ago. Now, the salaries which the Rajas gave to the soldiers, these payments were made in form of punched coins or punch mark coins. Forts made easier for the Rajas to control the people who lived inside the fort. Now let us look at the taxes. As the rulers of Mahajanpads were building huge forts, maintaining big armies, they needed more resources and they needed officials to collect these. So instead of depending on occasional gifts brought by people, they started collecting regular taxes. Now let us look at these taxes. First was taxes on crops, which was the most important because most of the people were farmers. This was known as bhaga or share. And next, there were taxes on craftspeople also. These could have been in form of labor. Now, herders were also expected to pay taxes in form of animals and animal produce. There were also taxes on goods that were brought and sold through trade. The hunters and gatherers also had to provide forest produce to the Raja. So, this was how the Raja was able to collect the resources to run his kingdom. Changes in the agriculture. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time. First was the growing use of iron plowshares. This meant that heavy clayey soil could be turned over better than with a wooden plowshare, so more grain could be produced. Second, people began transplanting paddy. Paddy means rice. This meant that instead of scattering seeds on the ground from which plants would sprout, saplings were grown and then planted in the fields. These changes led to increased production as many more plants survived. However, it was back-breaking work, means it was very hard work. Generally, slave men and women, dasas and dasis, and landless agricultural laborers, kamakaras, had to do this work. Let us take a closer look at two very important Mahajanpads of the time. The first is Magad. Magad became the most important Mahajanpad in about 200 years. Out of the 16 Mahajanpads, Magad was the most powerful one. Bimbisar, Ajatashattu, and Mahapadmananda were powerful rulers who ruled over Magad. They conquered other Janpads and extended it to northwestern part of the subcontinent. Rajagriha, present-day Rajgir in Bihar, was the capital of Magad for many years. Later, the capital of Magad was shifted to Patliputra in Patna, Bihar. There were many reasons behind Magad being so powerful. First was many rivers such as Ganga and Son used to flow through Magad. The rivers flowing in Magad were important for transport, water supplies, and making the land fertile. Magad had forests full of wood for building houses, carts, and chariots. These forests had elephants who were captured and trained for the army. In those times, having huge creature like elephant in the army was a big thing. Magad had iron ore mines in their region. These mines helped to make strong tools and weapons. Around 2300 years ago, Alexander came to India but couldn't go beyond Beas. He could not capture Magad. The soldiers of Alexander refused to march further because they were scared from the Indian rulers and their armies. They had heard that the rulers of India had vast armies of foot soldiers, chariots, and elephants. Let us now look at a closer look at Vaji, another important Mahajanpat. Vaji was another kingdom with its capital at Vaishali, Bihar. It had a different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. In this type of government, there was a group of kings who ruled the kingdom, not only just one single king. In Gana or Sangha, sometimes there were thousands of men who ruled together and each one was known as Raja. All Rajas decided together that what had to be done and how through discussion and debate. Women, dasas, and kammakaras could not participate in this decision and debate. The Buddha and Mahavir belonged to Ganas or Sanghas. Famous Buddhist book Digha Nikaya contains information about Vaji and speeches of the Buddha. Rajas of powerful kingdoms tried to conquer Sanghas, but Sanghas managed to survive for long. Ajatashatru, the king of Magad, wanted to attack the Vajis. He sent his minister named Vasakara to the Buddha to get his advice on the matter. But the Buddha asked whether the Vajis met frequently in the full assemblies. When he heard they did, he replied that the Vajis would continue to prosper as long as they held full frequent assemblies, they met and acted together, followed established rules, respected, supported and listened to the elders. Vaji women were not held by force or capture. Chaityas or local shrines were maintained in both towns and villages. Wise saints who followed different beliefs were respected and allowed to enter and leave the country freely. In this way, we come to know about how different the kingdom of Vaji was from the kingdom of Magad. Now, the Ganas or Sanghas lasted for a very long time, till about 1500 years ago, when the last of the Ganas or Sanghas were conquered by the Gupta rulers, which we will read about later on. In the same time, in the world, in Greece, Athens, around 2500 years ago, people of Athens set up a form of government which was called a democracy, which lasted for about 200 years. All free men over the age of 30 were recognized as full citizens. There was an assembly that met at least 40 times a year to decide on important matters. All citizens attended these meetings. It is very similar to how the democracies work in the modern day. Now, very important thing about Athens is that there were several thousand slaves there who worked in mines, fields, households and workshops but were not treated as citizens.